Okay, let's do this.
Listening to the Astrocast.
Welcome back to the Astrocast. I'm your host, Drew. Today is Tuesday, July 1st, 2025. We've got a waxing gibbous moon in front of us. It looks like 39% and counting. Look, guys, I'm going to make absolutely no claims about this green screen behind me. This is kind of a spare the moment thing. I figured I'd give it a try. We'll see how things go. Hope everybody's doing well. All that being said, let's see if we can fade out this tune a little bit here and start talking about our show. So welcome back to the Astrocast. I'm your host, Rue. Hope everybody's having a great week. I hope you've had a little bit of clear skies over the last new moon cycle. Goodness knows it came and went really fast. But I got 3 good nights out of the new moon cycle, and I was quite happy with that. So I did really well with the data that I was able to capture. I've really been trying to put the new astrograph, the ASCAR SQA55, through its paces as much as I can because, it's funny. I feel like this is, and I don't feel like I know this is the 4th summer in a row now where we've said, man, this summer seems like a bust because we have just had so much cloudy weather and rain and thunderstorms and heat waves and wildfires. And, if it's not the clouds, it's a wildfire. And if it's not thunder, it's rain. But you know what? There's not too much we can do about that. We can say, winter will be coming before we know it. And, just take advantage of the nights that you can when you can, because, they're far and few between. Now, that being said, I did want to, briefly touch on something. We were talking in our Discord last week, and obviously we get a lot of new people that are new to the hobby that join into the Discord, and they're very, very excited to be, out there imaging. And I can definitely appreciate that. Whenever I was first getting started, I think I was out, any opportunity that I got, period. But in this particular case, and I believe it was Chris, and forgive me because I always get everyone mixed up in the Discord. I know all of you individually, but I just have a hard time remembering who said what. Terrible with names. So anyhow, he had like 2 free hours one night to image, and that was pretty much all that was available when he was checking his weather forecast. And I said, look, man, I get it. Believe me, I get it. I love going out, at 3 a.m. just as much as the next guy, but be careful, let your body get rest as well. I'm one to talk. I wake up at 2:00 in the morning and go out and image. But, if all you have on your calendar is, 2 clear hours for 3 nights, consider skipping them. And I say that as somebody who absolutely loves astrophotography, but you don't want to wake up and have terrible seeing or terrible transparency because of all the rain and clouds that have been in the area. And then, image for 2 hours, you might run into issues, setting up. God knows I've done that before where I only have a couple of hours to image. And I run into an issue with polar alignment or with my camera focus, or, any number of things can happen when you're out imaging. But, just make sure you get your sleep is the main thing. I'm not saying you always got to skip every 2-hour imaging session, far from it. But just remember, you can only do so much with 2 hours. And unless you're working on like a dedicated project, kind of similar to what I'm doing right now with my Crescent Nebula and Bubble Nebula project that I'm working on, I've got 10 hours of data so far. It's looking really good. Actually, I did a process of it this last week, and sure enough, the Bubble Nebula is definitely there. I was able to get it to come out pretty well, actually. I was actually impressed. Now, that being said, I do think it's going to need a lot more data before I'm truly happy with where it's at. I'm thinking probably somewhere in the range of like 25 to 30 hours is what I'm going to want to go for on this one. So I'll keep you apprised of how that goes. It's just so crazy because I've got 10 hours on that, and that's using a L Extreme filter, which is, great. It's the fast one, the one that's made for like F2 imaging rigs. But when I compare that 10-hour image with something from a dark sky site that I did last year, like I think the Horsehead Nebula is a good one because it's got lots of doubly ionized oxygen, being in a reflection nebula as it is. It's just crazy, like the difference in acquisition time when you're at a truly dark location versus, the Bortle 7 backyard setup. So, I tell you, it really makes me want to make more trips to dark sky sites because, if I can pick up that much data in one night with, my on the road rig, if you will, which is the ASCAR as well now, or the Rokinon 135, then why should I, stay at home for, God knows how long to get, 20, 25 hours of data. I mean, at this rate, it's going to take the rest of the summer because I've only gotten 3 successful nights. But we do have Friday and Saturday are looking very promising this coming week in Charlotte. And even though the moon's going to be about half full at that point, doing narrowband imaging, the moon shouldn't bother me that much. I might not be able to get some of the fainter details, but I'm definitely going to try it. So, but the point being, just remember to get your sleep when you can, because there's always going to be, another night that you can image. Well, hopefully. So just keep that in mind. Something else cool that I wanted to mention and just talk about for a few minutes, because we briefly talked about it last week while I was outside under the stars, but I was just kind of pulling little factoids from my head about the Vera Rubin, and I didn't have any of the like actual facts in front of me. And I knew that like, obviously there's some really cool stuff as far as, like astrophotography specific facts are concerned with the Vera Rubin. So I started doing a little bit of research on it. And first of all, if you haven't seen the first look photos from Vera Rubin somehow, I'm sure you have, like that Lagoon Nebula image. I think everybody's seen it at this point, and my God, it's incredible. That is one heck of an image. But I'll tell you the other one, the Cosmic Treasure Chest. That's a really, really cool image as well. And you can download, I guess what they call the original size on their webpage, but it's 10,000 by 5,200 pixels, essentially. So a very, very large image, about 150 megabytes. That being said, that's actually nowhere close to the like actual FITS file. The uncompressed FITS files from Vera Rubin actually come in closer to 6.5 gigabytes. Now, I would love to get my hands on some of that data so I could play around with it. But we unfortunately can't do that. I started looking into how you can get that data, because obviously like with like the James Webb and the Hubble and a lot of these types of scientific projects, you can actually download the raw data directly from NASA. But with the Vera Rubin, it's actually only available to those who have scientific rights. They have like proprietary access only for specific scientists and international partners that are part of the Rubin Science Platform or approved data access centers. So the way it's going to work is for the first 2 years, the data is going to be in the proprietary period. After that 2 years is up, though, it will become public. So we will eventually get our hands on the raw fits data, but that won't happen for about 2 years. And like you say, it's doing 15-second exposures. And we'll go over some of the specifics of the actual, imaging train and what have you. But 15-second exposures that are 6.5 gigabytes each. Can you imagine? I mean, that is just unreal. So I started looking into the imaging scale for Vera Rubin because I wanted to know, like, after looking at that photo that they put up of the lagoon, you can kind of get a sense for the scale because it's very similar to what we see with something like a Red Cat 51 or my ASCAR SQA 55 in terms of how many degrees it actually covers. But there obviously is a very, very big difference, and that is how many pixels are covered within those degrees. So the Vera Rubin has almost 10 square degrees, so 3.5 by 3.5 degrees. But the sensor is what makes up the huge difference. So you're talking about 3.2 gigapixels on a 0.64 by 0.64 meter sensor. So just an absolutely massive array of sensors, and it's 189 CCDs specifically, and each one of those is 4,000 by 4,000 pixels. So, I mean, it's essentially like having 189 Astro cameras all tied together and pointed through one Red Cat, if you want to think about it like that way. And the flatness of the field is 10 microns, so it's extremely precise, extremely flat field, as you would imagine, because it's built for scientific data. Let me think here. I got a few more facts that I jotted down while I was looking. Obviously, we already know it's going to cover the entire southern sky every few nights. They say it takes about 3 to 4 nights in good conditions for it to do it. That is an image of the entire southern hemisphere. The focal ratio, that's a fun one. It's actually f1.2. So an incredibly fast optical system. In fact, it's one of the fastest ever made for astronomical imaging on this scale. So, with something that fast, it can capture very, very faint details. It's obviously a monochrome sensor. You wouldn't use something like a color sensor, but they do have the 6 filters that are set up to do LRGB SHO imaging. So very, very cool. Certainly can't wait to see more data coming through. I really want like someone like Linus Tech Tips to go down and tour the data facility, because I have to know how they have the servers set up. And if they're using like SSDs, I mean, they have to be using SSDs, but like, are they using servers that are full of M.2 SSDs, or is it some proprietary data system that they're using? I'm really curious, because like you say, if you're getting 6.5 gigabytes every 15 seconds, then you're talking like 30 terabytes of data, every single night. You get to petabytes in just, a matter of a month or two. So I don't know. It's just unreal, and I can't wait to see more info as it comes out. It is on an alt-az mount, so you don't have to polar align the Vera Rubin Observatory. I guess when it's that big, it doesn't really matter. And I suppose they're only taking 15-second exposures at a pretty darn wide field of view. But even like I say, even though it's a similar field of view to what you would get with something like a Red Cat 51. You just got to remember, since it has 3,200 megapixels instead of like, 10 megapixels like your average Astro camera has, that means that you can, zoom in much, much farther, like incredibly farther on those images and still get that really, really crisp detail that we crave. So awesome stuff. I will link in the show notes some links to the Vera Rubin Observatory images if you haven't somehow seen the first look images yet. I definitely encourage you to check those out because they are really, really cool. Back to astrophotography. I wanted to talk about this camera. I can't remember if I mentioned it on the show or not yet. I think I might have very briefly mentioned it once, but I was looking through High Point Scientific earlier today, just kind of drooling through various gear that's on their website, as I'm sure you guys do as well. And the 2600 Air has been out for I think a little over a year now. And the big worry going into that camera was people were worried about having so many devices packed into an all-in-one device. And, saying if one thing fails, then it all fails. And people were just really worried that it wouldn't work out well for them. And it seems like the fears are largely unfounded from what I can see for the most part. I haven't seen too many reports of 2600s having a whole lot of trouble. Excuse me. And because of that, I thought it was worth mentioning the other MC Air device that they are currently having up for pre-order. And extremely popular camera over the last year or two, I guess year actually, because it hasn't been out for 2 years fully yet. But the ASI 585 MC Air. So I've got the MC Pro for the 585, and it's actually probably my number one recommended camera for beginners if you're starting with like a wide field imaging rig like a Red Cat or an ASCAR SQA 50, a small refractor telescope is definitely a great way to go with this particular camera. And looking at the 585 MC Air, it's coming in at only $999. So $1,000, and you're getting a really good sensor. Like, even though the 585 is definitely a small sensor, it's nowhere close to like an APS-C. It gives you a really, really good field of view, and the performance has been excellent on it. So, I really have enjoyed using that camera quite a bit, and I find myself actually using it a lot more than my 294 MC Pro now because it's just easier to use. It doesn't have amp glow, which is wonderful. The flats are super easy to take. With a 294, you may or may not know, but flats can be a little bit tricky to take on the 294. You have to take basically extended length flats. They have to be at least 2 or 3 seconds. Whereas with the 585, you can just do the auto exposure through the ASI Air software, and you're good to go. So the 585 MC Air coming in at $999 seems like a really good deal to me. It's made for anything between 300 and 800 millimeter focal length is where it's kind of its sweet spot. And like I say, that's the majority of the small refractors that we see. Even something like an 80 millimeter doublet scope, like my SV Boney, it works great with that. In fact, when I put it on my 80 millimeter doublet, because the sensor is so small, it gives me a much more zoomed in view than I would get with something like my 294, and can let me get a lot closer to things like the Eagle Nebula. So like when I was shooting the pillars last year on my dark sky trip, I used the 585, and it gave great results because I was able to like get in a lot closer, figuratively speaking, of course, because it's a smaller sensor, it's a crop view. We've talked about that many times on the show, but essentially it's just cropping in what a larger sensor would otherwise have captured. But for my intents and purposes, getting a 4K image that's that close up to something like the Eagle Nebula and giving you, just a much better field of view on something like the Pillars of Creation, is just incredible. So I really like it. The camera itself is great, and I'm not going to purchase a 585 MC Air. It doesn't make sense for me to, because I already have a 585. But if I didn't, and I was in the market for my first astrophotography camera, I gotta tell you, I would probably go with this, just because if you think about the cost savings of not having to buy a guide camera, a guide scope, an ASI Air, that adds up quickly. I mean, let's think here. An ASI 120 goes for, I want to say, like $130-ish right now. If you want to get a decent guide scope, you're probably going to spend another 70, let's just say $200 for a guiding setup, and then at least 200 more for the ASI Air. And that's if you go with the mini. So really you're going to be about at a wash. So why not get the all-in-one device that already has the guide cam built into it? So if you don't know, the Air devices that they have been doing, they did the ASI 2600 MC, and I believe they have an MM, the mono version as well, Air cameras, which are kind of their flagship cameras that ZWO has. The 2600 really is just a phenomenal camera, but again, in a completely different price range at around $2,500. Whereas this is, just a hair under $1,000. So it's great. All of your computer stuff is already built into it. You've got all the ports that you need on the back. You got 4 USB ports, the Type-C port, power, obviously. It's a cooled camera. So you can, not have to worry about heat in the summer if you're like me and use a Canon R5 for a lot of your stuff. And I guess technically you still run the albeit small risk of having something fail. And I would like to know, in fact, I haven't asked ZWO yet. I need to email them and ask. We've got a rep that I ask questions to over there. I wonder, and maybe one of the listeners can tell me if one of you guys has it, if you've got like a 2600 MC Air. I wonder if, let's say the guide sensor did fail, could you just plug in a different guide camera, like a 120 mini, and then just select it in the dropdown? I mean, I would imagine that you could, just like whenever you plug in multiple devices into your ASI Air, you just click the little drop down and you can choose which one you want to use for which camera. So, I mean, even if something did fail, it doesn't mean that the whole device is junk, I would imagine. And now I could be wrong about that because I don't actually own one, but logically, I would think that you'd be able to pick a different camera if something were to happen. So anyway, like I say, it's up for pre-order now. I'm not sure when those are going to ship out. But when I do find out, I will obviously let you guys know. So if it's something you're considering getting, like your first astrophotography camera, I would definitely recommend looking at that one. And just as a reminder, we're affiliates with High Point Scientific. So if you'd like to make any purchases through High Point, I'll put the link to the show notes to our affiliate link. And every time you make a purchase through that, we get a small cut. So it helps pay for the serving of the show. So one of the huge advantages too, that I think gets overlooked a lot with these MC Air devices, is cable management. I mean, if you think about it, I think the only thing that you would need is really just an autofocuser. And depending on the scope that you're using, you don't necessarily need an autofocuser. Like my ASCAR, it's super easy to focus, that SQA55, and it holds focus very, very well. So I don't necessarily need to refocus very often. If I were going on a trip and I wanted to pack as light as possible, I could literally just grab, my Star Adventure GTI, the actual ASCAR scope, and then the 585 Air. And that's all you really need, filters if you want to bring them, obviously. But obviously you can add things like the rotator if you want to use a rotator. Although the ASCAR has a built-in field rotator that works really well, so no need for that. Um, but if you wanted to, you certainly could. It's funny too. Speaking of rotating, let me give you a quick tip here. Something that I was like, duh, when I realized it. This is some of you are gonna laugh at me, and others of you might be like, oh man, why didn't I think of that? So whatever camp you're in, sorry about that. But on my ASCAR scope, I realized the other day when I was looking at it that it actually is numbered all the way around 360 degrees. So if you go to the left or to the right, it'll show you notches, and those actually represent how many degrees you're rotating the camera. So if you go into the ASI Air and you don't have a rotator, you can actually go to the plan screen, and I believe you can do it from the preview screen as well. And when you're in the actual planetarium area and you're dragging your camera box over the target that you're going for, you'll see a little box pop up that says frame. And if you tap on frame, it will allow you to rotate the box on the screen to frame it up exactly how you want. Now, at this point, you would obviously, if you had the electronic rotator, it would rotate it for you to, whatever you had rotated the box to. But if you don't have an electronic rotator like myself, what you can do is rotate the box to where you want, and the ASI Air will actually say CW or CCW, so clockwise or counterclockwise, and then the number of degrees. So like, for example, the other day I was framing up that crescent shot, and I knew I wanted to get the soap bubble in there as well. And I knew I needed to, frame it up a particular way. And I didn't want the crescent to be right in the middle because I kind of feel like I've done that shot so many times. I wanted it to be off-centered, and there's a lot of that hydrogen alpha signal off to the left frame of the field. So I framed it up just right. And then it actually told me counterclockwise 35 degrees. So I loosened up the rotator bolt on my scope and literally just went from 0 to 35, and then bang, it was perfect. So I don't know why that never occurred to me before, but it didn't. So if you've got a built-in rotator on yours, you can do the exact same thing. And even if it's not numbered, you could mark it yourself very easily, like 45 degrees and 90 degrees, and that way you could at least have a pretty good estimate. If it says 15 degrees, then you could put it a third of the way between 0 and 45, and so on and so forth. So just something to consider the next time you are framing up an object. All right. So the other cool thing I wanted to talk to you guys about, and this is super cool. So what was I doing? I think I was on Facebook, and I was looking at one of the learning astrophotography groups, and I happened to stumble across a photo that somebody had uploaded, and it said, "This is my solar graph for the last 6 months." And the name sounded vaguely familiar, solar graph. Like I felt like I had heard that before somewhere, but I was like, what is a solar graph? And I'm looking at this image, and it's got all these beautiful traces of sunlight going over it. And I'm staring at it, and I'm like, what exactly am I looking at here? And then I went back and reread the post, and it said 6-month solar graph. So they went from essentially equinox to equinox, lowest to highest, and back again. Okay. And what it is it's actually a single exposure of the sun every single day for a 6-month period. And if that sounds like super cool to you, then me and you are on the same wavelength on this. And the first thing that occurred to me was, how on earth would you take a 6-month exposure without overexposing the image? Because, a lot of times I can't take a 6-minute exposure at night without overexposing the image. So how would you do a 6-month exposure that is, constantly running the whole time without overexposing it? It didn't make sense to me. I was really, really shocked to learn that it is first of all, it's a very old practice. It's been done for a long time. People have been making solar graphs, and it is a very, very low tech analog situation that we're dealing with here. So it's very cool. I went and looked up some videos on how to do it, and most of them were pretty old. I was surprised whenever I searched it on YouTube. The first video that came up was like 13 years old. So I don't think this is something that a whole lot of people know about. And if you have already heard of this, forgive me. But I'm going to just kind of explain to you how the process works, and I'll give you like a rough idea of how to build it. But if you want to actually build your own, I would highly recommend that you check out some of these videos about making one. I'm going to link to everything in the show notes about how to make it and what you need. Most of the stuff that you need, believe it or not, you'll probably already have. Because again, this is a very, very low tech process for making a solar graph. So, first thing to know is that this is an analog exposure. So we're not using anything like a digital camera or anything of the sort. So you're not going to have to worry about leaving your expensive gear outside for 6 months. So that's good to know. The second thing to know is that you need a special type of photographic paper. And it's essentially, I think it's actually called photograph paper, if I'm not mistaken. And there are a couple of different companies that make it. But there is one company in particular that I found. It's called Ilford Gallery, and they make some of the best papers that are out there for printing and photography. And when I found out they actually make photography paper, and I'm saying photography paper, but I don't mean like the kind that you print photos on. I mean that it actually has like exposure film within the paper. So that's what I mean, kind of like film, but not quite. So anyway, you get a piece of this paper, and it's typically done with a like a 5x7 sheet, which is what they're usually sold in. And what you do is you take a can. So people will take like a beer can, for example, just a 12-ounce can, and they will cut the top of it off. And then what they do is they fold the paper around and slide it into the can. And then they take basically another can and cut it in half and slide that over the original can, if you're following me, and then use gaffer's tape to tape the two together. So you essentially now have a film canister for all intents and purposes. You've got a piece of film-like paper on the inside, and it's completely sealed from light on the outside. So you may guess where we're going with this next, but what you want to do is go into a dark room, and you want to get a very small, like a needle, like a pin. Sewing needle will work perfectly fine, or maybe you could use like a paper clip. That would be perfectly fine as well. And what you want to do is right in the middle of the can, you want to actually poke just a single tiny little hole in the can. And that's it. After you poke that hole, you want to cover up the hole with a small piece of tape. And then this is the really cool part. You're going to go somewhere, and the location is just so important. You have to be able to put this can somewhere where no one is going to mess with it, because, if God forbid. So first of all, let me just say, maybe don't use a beer can. Depending on where you're putting it, if some drunk person walked by and saw a beer can 6 feet up in the air, they might be like, "Wow, somebody just left a beer here? what's this? And reach up and grab it. So you definitely want to put it out of reach of people. So, put it up high if you can. If you can't put it up somewhere high, you're going to want to put it somewhere where nobody will mess with it. I was thinking the observatory would be just the absolute perfect place to do this, just because I could tell everybody there, like, hey guys, this is a solar graph. Please don't mess with this. And I'm going to leave it here for the next 6 months. So location is key. So after you have found the right place, then essentially what you're going to want to do is mount the can very, very firmly. And it's going to be an extremely wide field of view. If you look up any of the photos of these, you'll see that it ends up being essentially like a fisheye lens in terms of the width of the exposure. And after you've got it mounted, and you do want to point it in the right direction, what you're going to want to do is, I'm trying to think of the direction that you're wanting to aim. So I'm picturing aiming from the south to the north. Hang on a sec. Let me check on that. All right. Sorry about that. So in the northern hemisphere, you want to aim it south, which makes sense if you think about it, because the sun rises in the southeast and then sets kind of in the northwest, or southwest, depending on where you are, I suppose. So yeah, from the north, aim it south and aim it towards basically the meridian. So you want to go like straight down the galactic equator. So aim it directly south. Because what you're trying to do here essentially is capture the sun at its highest point every single day that it goes by for however long you decide to expose the image. And the reason that it's such a great time to do this right now is because we just passed the summer equinox. So the sun is obviously at its highest point at that time. So this would be a good time to start one. And then you could image all the way until the winter equinox when it is at its lowest point in 6 months. And then you would have just a really cool image that will show you an entire 6 months long exposure of the sun. So a few other little key points to mention. After you have the can mounted up and you want to angle it upward about 30 to 45 degrees, and the idea, like I said, is to capture the entire path of the sun each and every day. You're going to see these long sweeping arcs of the sun going by on the actual image when it's done. But after you get the can mounted and kind of pointed up about 30, 45 degrees, you want to go ahead and remove the tape at that point. That's very important to remember. Remove the tape that you put over that tiny little pinhole that you put on in the dark area when you were first setting it up. And that is essentially your shutter. So now you're letting light into the can, but only a teeny tiny amount. And remember, you got a pretty large piece of photographic paper in there. So it's going to take, a long time for it to fully expose, really as long as you want. And what's so cool about this is when you see the final image, you will notice little gaps in the arcs, just tiny little gaps. And what that is like, if it rains one day, if it's cloudy one day, you will notice these small little gaps. And like, I guess like the best way that I can convince you that this is worth doing is to just literally go on Google and look up one of the images. Because after I saw one and then realized what they had done, me personally, my mind was kind of blown by the whole thing. I just think it's super cool. It seems like one of those things that we should have done back in elementary school, like maybe at the beginning of 5th grade, we all built our own solar graph and then set it up. I mean, we did the eclipse thing with the cardboard pinholes. And if you guys remember doing that, that was fun. But man, this would be a really fun project to do with your kids too. So obviously I'm going to get involved. I'm definitely making one. And if you're going to do it, by the way, I noticed that like the Ilford Gallery paper, it comes with, I think it's 24 sheets to a pack. Do several, like experiment with different, types of exposures, different size cans. smaller pieces of paper, larger pieces of paper. I mean, this is a 6-month project you're talking. So, if I was taking that much time to do it, I would probably set up multiple cans in different areas if I could. I wouldn't want to have just one can doing it because, if something happens to that can a week into the exposure and you don't know because you don't come back and check on it for 2 months, you're going to be pretty ticked off. So try to set up a few different ones. It's really, really crucial that you secure it very, very well. Use duct tape, use whatever you got to do to secure it. From what I've read, rain doesn't appear to really be an issue. I had a friend ask me about that, like, how do you keep the rain out? But apparently, if you just have like a teeny tiny little pinhole, the drops pretty much roll over it. Just make sure to keep that pinhole very, very small, and you shouldn't have any issues from what I've seen. I can also tell you if you get something cool in the foreground, it will expose it as well. Like some of the images that I've seen online have buildings in the foreground, which is just really cool considering just how analog the process is. Anyhow, after the time period is completely up and you've done your entire, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, you can do it however long you want. You don't have to do it for 6 months, but I would personally recommend that just because you'll get the highest sun all the way to the lowest sun in your image. And it really is cool seeing that because it really paints a vivid picture of exactly how that works. But anyhow, you'll go back to retrieve your can. And at that point, it's just really important to remember to put the tape back over the pinhole. Don't let your image get messed up on the way home. When you go home to develop the can, you're not actually going to develop it. So when you get home, essentially what you want to do is scan the photo immediately, and then you will import it into Photoshop or Lightroom so you can play around with sliders and brighten it up and all that sort of good stuff. So like I say, I'm gonna link to a couple of videos that show how it's done. And if you happen to be watching the YouTube video this week, I'll see if I can throw up an image. I'm not going to go crazy with the video edits this week just because I would love to get this episode out tonight. And if I start going crazy with video edits, it'll never get out. So just something to consider. I hope that you guys will give it a try. If you do, let me know. Send me a copy of your image if and when it's done. You can send it to astrocast@gmail.com or post it on Instagram and just hashtag the Astrocast or @the Astrocast. And I will definitely check it out and let you know what I think. So I want to let you guys know that I'll be going on my family vacation in a few weeks. Actually, just a couple of weeks now. We are leaving on Saturday the 19th. So got that coming up. Hang on one second. I'm actually getting a phone call. All right. So the other thing I wanted to mention is that I'm going to be gone in a couple of weeks for a couple of weeks. So we're going on our family vacation. That's actually coming up, in like 2 weeks now, I think, less than 2 weeks. So we're leaving on the 19th and we're going to be gone until the 26th. So I will probably take 2 weeks off for that trip. I have never taken 2 weeks off this show since I started it. It makes me super nervous because I don't want to leave you guys for 2 weeks, but I'm sure you will live without me. I've thought about maybe putting together like a greatest hits episode for that week, but I'm not sure if I'm going to do that or not yet. Maybe I will record a little bit of stuff in advance. I don't know yet. We'll see, but just a heads up ahead of time. I will tell you that where we're going is going to end up being some really awesome content for the show because we're actually heading down to Satellite Beach, Florida, which, if you don't know, is right beside Kennedy Space Center and NASA and the Space Force Base and all of those very, very cool attractions, which I am just really looking forward to see. I don't know if I'm right or not, but I understand that the Saturn V rocket might be there and you might be able to see it, maybe even touch it. I don't know. Don't tell me either, because I want to be surprised if it's actually there. I remember reading something years ago about it being down there. Um, and if it is, I definitely want to see it because I like love the Saturn V. I was obsessed with it for the longest time. And to be able to actually see it with my own two eyes and maybe even touch it, I don't know if I'll be so lucky as to be able to do that. They usually have cool stuff like that roped off. But then again, the Saturn V is so big. Maybe they let you go up to the side and touch the tank. I don't know. We'll see. But I think I'm going to bring my DJI wireless mics down there for that particular event. Just because I'm thinking like maybe, just maybe, I'll get like a super cool tour guide that'll want to clip on the lapel mic and tell us all about the various things that I'm able to see down there. And I would love to take you guys along for the ride for some of that tour. So we're only going to do one day at, on all the space stuff, NASA stuff, supposedly. I don't know. We'll have to see. We're down there for a full week. We're going Saturday through Saturday. I'm meeting a fan of the show down there, which I'm very much looking forward to. A little bit more to come on that later. I'll have more things to say about that in the future. I'm not going to spoil anything yet, but we've been working on something together, the two of us, and I think it's going to be super cool. So definitely very much looking forward to that. If you guys have any recommendations for like awesome space stuff to see while I'm in the area, please let me know. You can email me at ruastrocast@gmail.com and I would love to check it out. I know that there's not going to be any rocket launches when I'm down there. At least it doesn't look like there's going to be. And unfortunately, it looks like I'm going during full moon, which really, really sucks because I understand that if you continue heading south and get down to the Sebastian Inlet area, Pelican Island Wildlife Refuge, there's some very, very dark skies down that way. I would love to see him. I actually met a friend last time I was in Florida, way back in, God, when were we down there? I think it was like February, if I remember correctly. We went down there to visit my mother. Yeah, it was February because we went for her birthday. And I met a friend, Joseph. I was out under one of the docks, doing, morning photographs of the sunrise at the dock. And he happened to be there and we started talking and we friended each other on Facebook. And since then, he's started to get a little bit into astrophotography, which is super cool. So I've been following his Milky Way shots. If you happen to be listening, Joseph, shout out to you, my friend. Hope to run into you when I'm down there. I got to meet up with a coworker of mine, a colleague of mine who lives in the God, what is it? I'll tell you. Boca Raton. He lives in Boca Raton. So we're going to meet halfway. That's Port St. Lucie, I believe, is kind of halfway between where I'm going to be in Boca Raton. So going to get to meet him and hopefully have dinner with him and his wife. Very, very much looking forward to that as well. And then me and my wife are going to do a day at the parks, which is, I don't know how that's going to work out because I'm 40 now and I'm definitely not getting on any roller coasters, but the ones we're going to aren't necessarily about being on roller coasters. So we'll be checking out Springfield, USA, which I am just beyond excited to see because I am, if you are a longtime listener of the show, you might know I'm a really big fan of The Simpsons. I've been watching it since I was 6 years old, and I've seen every episode from seasons 1 through 20. I mean, seasons 1 through 10, I don't think it would be unreasonable to say I've seen them hundreds of times because I've been watching it my whole life. And ever since like the DVDs started coming out, I've been watching the reruns. Heck, I remember watching on Fox, they'd come on at 6:00 and 6:30 on weeknights. They would show the reruns and I would always watch those and tape them on the VCR and that sort of thing. Speaking of VCRs, just brief sidebar. My brother sold his house not too long ago and stumbled across a lot of our old family videos, and they're all VHS tapes, of course. And I really want to look through them because I think one of them might be a video from me in elementary school. We had a student news show, and I was actually the anchor of our sixth grade student news show back in elementary school. I went to a school called Bain Elementary in Mint Hill, North Carolina. Um, and I really, really want to see if that tape still exists. And it might be in the giant box of tapes that he gave me. But I went to go, purchase a VCR, and you can't get one for less than like $250, $300 now. Like you got to go on eBay, and they're all insanely expensive. And I'm like, how is this a thing? I know vintage stuff is cool, but $300 for a VCR is just ridiculous. So I'm trying to come up with a clever way that I can get a VCR for less than, a ridiculous price, because I am never going to pay $300 for a VCR come hell or high water. But I suppose checking pawn shops and Goodwills is probably going to be a good bet for where to start. So I'll definitely be doing that, and hopefully I'll be able to come up with that tape. So, but yeah, seeing Springfield, USA is going to be super cool. And then my wife really wants to go to Harry Potter World, so we're going to check that out. It's funny because she's a huge Harry Potter fan, but she hasn't read the books. I read all the books years ago and loved them, despite a lot of the drama that came out with the writer years later, which I won't get into. I still love the books, great stories, and it'll be really cool to visit Hogwarts. So definitely looking forward to that as well. All right, guys, let's talk about recommendations. I don't think I've given one in a couple of weeks, and I could certainly go in a lot of directions this week. I'm going to make a kind of general recommendation to you first, and then I'm going to make a very specific recommendation to you afterwards. So if you are a PC gamer like myself and part of the PC Master Race, you probably already know that the Steam summer sale is going on now through July 10th. This is an annual sale that Steam has where they put like a ton of their games on really, really deep discounts. And a lot of times throughout the year, if I find something that I really want to play, but I really don't want to pay full price for it, I'll add it to my wish list, and then I'll go back when the actual summer sale time rolls around and grab it. This year is no different. I've actually gotten like 6 or 7 games already, I want to say. Most of them for like less than $5 each. Some of them for like 89 cents, if I remember correctly. But I stumbled across one that really is a gem, and I am just having a blast playing it. So the game is called Cult of the Lamb, and it is a roguelite with kind of Stardew Valley elements, and that you maintain your little town. It's actually your cult, but you essentially have to like grow crops and make shelter and decorations and all that sort of stuff. But the art style is just, it's really unique. It's got that kind of paper cutout art style, almost like South Park-ish in that kind of 2D way. Kind of like a lot of iPad games are animated. My wife plays a ton of different games on her iPad, and they all have this kind of very similar visual vibe to them. And Cult of the Lamb kind of has a vibe like that, but I really, really dig it. It's an awesome, awesome art style. The game itself, though, is just so fun. It's so addictive. I can't stop thinking about it. I've already played like 20 days in it or something like that. That's days in the game, not real life days. I don't have time like that to play video games, unfortunately, although sometimes I wish I did. But it's really a great game, and I think you can get it for like less than $4 right now. So you will absolutely get your money's worth. I will say this probably isn't a game for the little ones. Yeah, it's called Cult of the Lamb, and though it's got a lot of like cutesy things in it, it's definitely got some imagery and words that you probably wouldn't want to have around the little ones. So just a fair warning, if you're a parent and your kids are listening, maybe wait till you're 16 to play this one. So that's about gonna do it for this week, guys. I really appreciate you tuning in this week. I know we covered quite a few different topics tonight, but I really, really just want to say again, Solar Graph, man, check it out. They're super duper cool. They are, obviously low budget, but in the best possible way, to be honest. Like, I just love it. It's so analog. It's so old school in just a very, very, very cool way. So build yourself a solar graph now. We're right near the equinox. It just passed. So the sun's only going to be getting lower in the sky over the next 6 months. And you're going to be so happy when you get that final image down out of the tree, as long as some drunk doesn't stumble by and grab your beer can out of the sky. The original post that I said, that I saw said, make sure you put it at least out of reach of drunks and also out of reach of a drunk on another drunk's shoulders, because they figure if it's a free beer, they might say, hey, let me get on your shoulder so I can grab it. So definitely put that thing way up high. Maybe get the ladder out and tape it up on your chimney or something along those lines. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for tuning in this week. You have been listening to the Astrocast. I am your host, Rue, and as always, clear skies.